why did you major in music? Because you love playing your instrument. I mean, really, I would say 99% of us would say that. That's where the seed was planted. That's where we're grounded. And I really think it's important that you get back to your roots because teaching is crazy, and I don't care what level you teach, it can get really crazy. And you find yourself kind of pulled at all different directions. You wear so many hats as a band director. And I think when you keep playing your instrument, especially in a community band, I mean, it doesn't have to be as high profile as, or with those expectations like Tara Winds, but get in a community band so that you've got that outlet of expression, of being grounded and finding, what made you love music so much, because sometimes that gets lost in the everyday grind of teaching. It took me a little while to realize that I'm not teaching music through the performance of band. I'm teaching children through the performance of band. And you got to love kids. Like, I'm lucky that I do love kids. I mean, right now it gives me chills. Get me in the classroom because I just love kids. And I think that's important. I think sometimes people go into the profession because they love their instrument, but they don't necessarily love kids. You know what I mean? They're okay sitting in the practice room practicing, or in their college band where everybody's functioning on a high level, but they're not comfortable dealing with 80 kids in a room that are squirrely.
This podcast is sponsored by FJM, Fred J. Miller Incorporated, found at fjminc.com. Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. I'm talking to Dr. Andrea Strauss today. Andrea, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I haven't talked to you in a really long time, and I'm so happy to see your smiling face and have this conversation with you. So thanks for taking time to talk with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This will be fun.
Okay, so you have taught on every level. So let's talk about that as a starting point, because this is going to be a very interesting conversation, I think. So you've taught elementary school, middle school, high school, college, keep going. What else?
Okay. So I've taught at all levels, private and public. I've been an assistant band director at all levels, or associate director, and I've been director of bands at all levels, at private school, public school. So I don't know of anybody else like that.
Well, I mean, so honestly, I don't know if I've ever met anybody who's done all those things, right?
Yeah.
And, a fantastic clarinetist, and you've been performing this whole time too. We were talking about the fact you're a conductor of Tara Winds, and you've been in that group how long?
This is my 36th year being in the group. I was a clarinetist, principal clarinetist, and I actually played clarinet and was associate conductor. And then I became the conductor. I think this is my 16th year as the conductor.
That's amazing. So in case anybody doesn't know, because Tara Winds is such an amazing group, talk a little bit about what that is.
Okay. Tara Winds is a all adult, it's really, no one's professional. We're all band directors, really, or music teachers. Not all of us. We do have some well, they're all probably music majors, but I've got an air traffic controller, I've got a judge, I've got a veterinarian, but for the most part, they're music teachers. And it's a pretty high profile group. We just 2 summers ago, we were invited to play in France, and we played at La Croix del Mar. We were the only group from the United States invited, and the other two groups, one was from Canada and Denmark. And we
Wow.
played at the Midwest Clinic, gosh, 1, 2, 3, I think 4 times now.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a performing group made up of band directors and just community people performing at the highest level. And that's what is so amazing about it.
Yeah, it's we have really high standards. Everybody knows when they audition, or if they're in it, that yeah, we have high expectations, and we don't play. a lot of music that other community bands mm, won't attempt. Like right now, we're doing the Star Wars trilogy, the Hunsberger, along with
Okay.
a number of other pieces. And yeah, so it's just a real. It's kind of like a freight train that's on the that never gets off the track. It's full speed ahead.
Well, I think it's wonderful that you're the artistic director and conductor of that group and that you're talking with me today. And of course, I know you from our work together at Georgia Tech, where you were the director of bands. I worked with the Georgia Tech marching band for quite a while and loved my time there. I think back on it fondly. In fact, Andre, I just did a series about how to start a college marching band um,
Oh,
with
nice.
some people up in Widener University who started a marching band from scratch, basically. And it was really interesting at a college. So I have fond thoughts, memories of our time together working college marching band too. So you've done all of that. So when I was thinking I wanted to talk to you, and I thought, okay, I would love for Andrea to be a part of this series about three things you wish you had known. I know it's tricky to come up with only three because there's so much we don't know when we start. But I'm interested to see what you decided to start with.
Okay. So, three things that I wish I had known before I started teaching is basically what we're going to talk about. And I mean, I've got notes, but I've changed them four, five, six times. But
Right,
I
right.
think these probably are the three that were the most important to me. And the first one was the importance of continuing to play your instrument. And that might be something that you don't think about, but why did you major in music? Because you love playing your instrument. I mean, really, I would say 99% of us would say that. That's where the seed was planted. That's where we're grounded. And I really think it's important that you get back to your roots because teaching is crazy, and I don't care what level you teach, it can get really crazy. And you find yourself kind of pulled at all different directions. You wear so many hats as a band director. And I think when you keep playing your instrument, especially in a community band, I mean, it doesn't have to be as high profile as, or with those expectations like Tara Winds, but get in a community band so that you've got that outlet of expression, of being grounded and finding what made you love music so much, because sometimes that gets lost in the everyday grind of teaching.
Okay, so did you play your clarinet as you were teaching as well? Like a lot of people use their instrument very effectively in the classroom. Was that what you did too?
Oh yeah, to me, well, the research says that modeling is key to improving behavior. So if I'm modeling, like if I'm teaching beginners, man, I'm the first sound they hear, and I've got the click track going, and I'm doing the, Simon Says or whatever. I mean, that's important. When I'm teaching high school band, a lot of time I would play my clarinet just to see how big that I could shape the phrase, because their dynamic contrast wouldn't be enough for me. And I could say, oh, no, I want it softer, I want it louder. But no, when I shaped it, they'd go, oh, I understand expression now. And so I think that's really important. The best part for me, though, was when I would get in community band. I mean, I was playing great band music, and I was able to, the artistry came back like I played in college. And I was able to keep that high level of artistry going. And I think that was key it was therapy for me. We'll get to that in a minute, but I think that's really important. The other thing then is you're playing for your classes and all. You're basically do as I do, not do as I used to do. And I really think that's really important.
Yeah, I've heard many directors talk about the power of modeling and playing their instrument for their students and demonstrating, here I am as a musician, playing along with you, demonstrating. I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't really expect you to start there, but it makes perfect sense that you did. It's very interesting. Okay, what else you have for me?
Okay. Then the other thing is that when I first started teaching, I was so driven. I was so driven, and part of that might be because, um, I'm a pioneer in the profession. There weren't really. I think there was only two high school band directors in the whole state of Georgia that were females. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that
Well,
amazing?
and you mentioned to me a minute ago, you were
Yeah.
seriously the first female college director in Georgia
Yes.
ever.
Yes.
So that is a pioneer.
Yeah. So because that's my experience, coming out of college, even my college band director, who really did support me, and he was my mentor, Jim Copenhaver. Even before I graduated, he said, "Now, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is going to be hard because you don't look." You don't look like everybody else. I mean, he was comfortable enough with me, and look, you can't tell, but I'm 5'2" and I weigh, I don't know, 108 if I'm lucky.
Right.
So, most kids are bigger than me.
Right, but everybody knows what a dynamo you are, Andrea. Seriously,
Oh,
right?
really?
That's always been your reputation. But to your point, you did have a lot to prove because you were wading into waters that there weren't a lot of other female directors around, and
Yeah.
you were going to be dismissed probably.
Yes. And I was by administrators when I interviewed for jobs because a lot of them looked at me and said, "She's going to conduct the band." They're not comfortable with that. I look
Wow.
too different. Yeah. But that's okay. That's a whole nother. You can get me on another podcast
That's,
about that.
that's a whole other thing. Right. But to your point, you
Yeah.
had a lot to prove when
Yeah.
you started.
Yeah, and I felt that responsibility. So I was really driven, and I was driven to be successful. And what does that mean in our band programs? Make superior ratings. You know, so I was real driven to make sure that kids, had all the right notes and all the right rhythms, and they had this certain sound. We were playing this level music, and we were doing the latest, greatest. And it took me a little while to realize that I'm not teaching music through the performance of band. I'm teaching children through the performance of band. And you got to love kids. Like, I'm lucky that I do love kids. I mean, I right now it gives me chills. Get me in the classroom because I just love kids. And I think that's important. I think sometimes people go into the profession because they love their instrument, but they don't necessarily love kids. You know what I mean? They're okay sitting in the practice room practicing or in their college band where everybody's functioning on a high level, but they're not comfortable dealing with 80 kids in a room that are squirrely. So you really need, I think it's really important that you got to love kids. And and I just feel like, you got to look at them like you're teaching someone's son or daughter, in my case, someone's mother or grandmother.
Right. Yeah.
And, these are humans that are looking for an outlet for expression and to create beauty. And you have to realize that it's not about the superior rating. It's about making these kids feel valued, every one of them. Now I'm getting to another, I think I'm getting to, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. No, not really. I think it's really important that not just your top band feels valued, which we can do if we're so motivated to, you know, get on that list of great bands. I think it's important that we value every student, every single one, that we make sure that we plant the seed to love music. And you do that by loving them. And I know that sounds maybe a little easier said than done, but you got to care about every kid and create a safe, healthy environment, a no bully zone. And no matter what they look like, they're accepted and they're loved. And if you really love kids, it's easy.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. This is such an interesting angle to have this conversation on because I think sometimes the students can become like the means to the end. Like they are going to allow me to play this this piece of music or have these accolades, whatever. And every time I talk with a really successful band director who's been teaching and working at a high level for a really long time, they always talk about they know they're teaching those students, right? They're building great citizens. They're helping students love music and go out there in the world and be successful. And that's a lot different than I want to make sure that we hit all the right notes all the
Yeah.
time and that I get certain accolades.
Do I have time to tell a little story?
Oh, please.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So at the end of my career, I've already taught music majors, Georgia Tech, director of bands. Okay. At the end of my career, I taught 2 years at a Title I, II, III, IV middle school, and I was the assistant band director. Now you're going, wow, Andrea, why did you do that? Well, not to get into a long story, but it was a very good friend of mine, and she was having some real serious health issues, and she needed help. And maybe this is just me, but when someone asks me to teach with them or they need help, I'm there. So the last 2 years, I worked with her, and I had to teach, get this, general music to the non-band orchestra chorus kids with no computers, just keyboards. And so this is a tough environment. This is a tough crowd. And I went in and, it taught me a lot. First of all, these kids don't care who you were, what you've done, that's forget that. They just want a place where they can be safe, feel safe, try something new, maybe learn a little bit and do something fun. And I had the rock and roll piano lab. I'll tell you right now.
I love it.
Oh yeah, it was rock and roll, but it was something that took me like the first 9 weeks. It took me a little while to kind of figure it out, and then I got in a groove. And those students ended up wanting my class again. Now, this was a school where an eighth grader could have the same general music like 6 or 7 times, which is terrible because you can't, they don't want to be there. And I just tried to keep making it really fun. Here's a story. So I won't say his name, but there was a student who was kind of the leader of a group, if you know what I'm saying, okay?
Sure.
Tough. And he would come into my class and he'd kind of sit. Of course, I had everybody strategically sitting in certain places, and he was off to the side, and I kind of would leave him alone, but I'd come by and we'd do Ode to Joy, and I'm like, hey man, you can do this. And one day he said, oh, by the way, they called me Miss Dr. Strauss. I think they thought my name was hyphenated. I didn't mind. I didn't care. Okay. Yeah. So he said, Miss Dr. Strauss, he goes, do you know this song by Lil Wayne? And, right away I'm like, all right, write it down. And I'll come back and teach it to you, because I don't want to get in trouble with the language. And the next morning he's coming down the hall and I said, hey man, come here. And I put the headphones on him and I played, whatever it was, like 4 notes, that's all it was. The rap tunes, you got maybe 3 to 4 notes. And I played it and he was like, Miss Dr. Strauss, that's it. Like, oh my God. And so every day, like not every day, but every week, he'd come up with a new tune. I'd go home, check it out, find the 4 notes and the rhythms, come back, play it to him. He wanted my class the whole 8th grade. So again, why am I telling you that? Because it's not about getting superior ratings. And I hope that kid not only remembers that class, but maybe it helped keep him out of trouble in life. I don't know.
Well, sure. And you were meeting him where he was in a way that was significant to him. And that's very cool. I mean, that took extra effort on your part, but it allowed you to connect with that student in a way that was so meaningful to them.
And he did learn how to read music, and he did play Ode to Joy, and he did write a little piece at the end of the 9 weeks that he played for the whole class.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah. So.
Very cool. I love it. Thank you for sharing that story. And I do think that it's important to figure out how to meet your students where they are on some level, right? Maybe it's the right stands tune, maybe it's something that you play that they all want you to play. And certainly that was a tricky environment. But
Yeah.
good for you for knowing that and reaching out to them.
Well, part of it is survival.
Sure. Yeah, but still, I think that's a really cool story.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
so I
is.
love that. And you're right. You have to think about I'm teaching these students and making an impact on them, and that's more important than all the other stuff we get caught up in.
Yeah,
So that's a great point.
and it kind of leads to my third point, and
Okay.
that is to know the culture, the school culture, the community culture. Know that before you take the job. Now, I know sometimes, you got to have a job. You got to take the job that's offered to you. But I think it's really important to research the culture. Now, I'm kind of like telling myself that because look at when I went to Georgia Tech. Oh my gosh, there was very few women. I was young. It was a tough crowd. I went to the dean of students on a few occasions. And would I've changed it? No, because we were doing the Atlanta Olympic Band from 1992 to 96, and that's what got me at Georgia Tech. So I had two jobs, but it was a really tough crowd that I had to persevere through. And so I think my third point is know the culture of the school. For example, you got to ask questions like, all right, why did the band director leave? Did they retire? Did they leave on good terms? Did they just find another job? Uh, are you new to the community, or are you working your way up? I think there's so many dynamics that goes into a school culture. How long has the principal been there? One time someone called me up and said, hey, so and so wants me to apply for the job. What do you think? And I said, well, did you talk to the other director? It was an assistant position. I said, did you talk to the director of bands? And what did he say about the culture and the principal? And he said, well, if you just keep your head down, you're okay. And I'm like, look, if the advice is to just keep your head down, that's not a healthy environment. I wouldn't take it.
Right.
So I think it's really important that you not only do you research the culture that you're looking to go into, but then changing a culture is really, really hard. Like Georgia Tech would be my best example. When I went in there, it was not a really healthy band culture. And by the time I left after 16 years, I was really proud of it. And I think that says a lot. The symphonic band was playing at state conventions. The marching band was really now being respected, on its own. But it took a long time. And the Olympics helped change that college culture.
Mm.
We use the building, if they were, building construction and all that would change our routes, and we'd have to change the way we did things. And so we didn't, I don't think we really knew it at the time, but we took advantage of the changing of the landscape to change the culture of the band to be more positive.
Right. In certain environments that you might be going into you may not need to change it. You may just not need the right person for that place. There are
That's
certain places that aren't competitive. And if you want to be a competitive kind of program, or what are the values of the community and does that match what you are interested in trying to do? And sometimes you can adapt yourself to where you end up
Yeah.
too. So there's a lot of dynamics here. But you're right. I don't think people necessarily ask enough questions or the right questions.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot you can do to research online as well, and then ask questions of people that you trust. There was one school that I know of where it was really part private and part public, but it didn't advertise that. For example, some people could, if they didn't live right in that city, they could pay to be at that school.
Hmm.
Well, what does that do to the culture? it creates the haves and the have-nots. So the ones that have the money that are paying into that school, okay,
Mm.
those are the ones that are getting special treatment. So you got to be aware of that, because if you're going to treat all your students equally based on their attitude and their effort and all that, that could be an issue.
Yeah, it reminds me of a time I was considering changing the school where I was teaching, and I did an interview with the principal, and he said everything I wanted him to say. And then I walked down, and the current band director was there, and I asked him some questions, and the it didn't all line up. And I
Oh,
was like, "Oh, this principal has just told me what I wanted to hear. He didn't tell me what was the band director told me what was real." So I didn't take that job because I didn't trust that administrator, right? Um, but that was sort of lucky on my part that I fell into that realization.
yeah, and I think in today's world of, there's so many ways to communicate with people now,
Right, right,
it's easy if you're willing to ask, like you said, ask the
sure.
right questions, or at least just ask. And some people are more comfortable being honest with a phone conversation rather than email or text. So
Right, because then
you
it's
got to
not,
say, yeah, do you
yeah,
have time
there's
to
not that trail.
chat? Yeah, just do you have time to chat? Just 5 minutes of your time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's very interesting that you're talking about culture because it probably won't shock you to know that that's the thing I get asked about the most with the podcast. All these episodes of the podcast, people want to know, how did this group create that culture? Where did that come from? How did they do that? How do they get their students to do that? But it's not easy, and it takes longer than you think to
Yeah,
make that shift.
yeah,
And you might not be in the right place to make it happen.
that's right. I have a 5-year plan. If you do go into an environment that you fit in, it's a good fit. It's a 5-year plan, and like year one, make little changes. If
If
it
any.
kind of depends. If the band program already thinks that they're great, don't change anything. Just, you know what I mean? But if they don't know any better, well, then you can change probably a little bit more. But the 5-year plan, by year five, it ought to be more of your culture and your agenda, so to speak, and your level of expectations. But it can take a while. The other thing I wanted to add to that is, if the former band director's name is on the building, he better be the one that is saying you should be the director of bands and saying that to the community. If
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake some people have made, is that if the band director's retiring or leaving and they're highly respected and they've been there a long time, then you either have to have been their assistant and they are, pretty much they found you and you're the golden child, okay?
Right.
Because if not, it's gonna be a rough road. At least that's what I've experienced and what I've seen. So the other thing I was going to say is I did move around maybe more than I wanted to, but your first year anywhere is hard. I don't care if you're Dr. So and so, if you've taught college, whatever. Year one, no matter where you go, is tough. So it's easier, I think, to stay in one place if your personality allows that to replicate, because you build a reputation by longevity.
Yes.
And I think so. Staying put is actually a lot easier.
Right. And what's interesting about this is because you and I are have sort of been on this big picture path for a long time, right? We're, about the same age and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting because I think when you start out, you think I'm going to do all of it all really fast and I'm going to get there really quick. And you're so driven, as you mentioned already, to want to get there so fast, but that's not how it works. You
Yeah.
really have to have this big arc of time. Like you said, at least 5 years. And I think to someone coming out of college, that may seem like a really long time, but in the span of a career, teaching music and building a program, that is not a lot of time.
No, no. I mean, if you're teaching 30 years, what is 5 out of 30? I mean, that's nothing. And I think what I've seen is the band directors that have stayed in one place for a long period of time and have outlived bad administrators,
Mm.
and hung on to good ones, and the community then um, just kind of embraces you as the one that knows. You know what you're doing. You've built a good program. We know how you operate and how you work, and that's a lot easier than going in new anywhere.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love it. Okay, so do you want to do a quick lightning round? Are there any other quick things that you had thought about that weren't in your top three that you just want to mention before
Oh,
we wrap this up?
I'm only halfway done. I got three other ones that aren't really band related.
If you have time, I'm willing to hear them, but I don't want to take your whole day.
Oh no, you said 4 to 5. I planned accordingly.
Okay, well, I didn't. Well, there's no rules about how this goes. If you have three more things to share, let's do it.
Okay, because these are three things that I wrote down that aren't really, just about the job. Okay,
Sure.
and you probably aren't going to hear these from other people. So, all right. So number one was that when you get your first job, immediately start saving in a savings account.
That's great.
I don't care if it's $50 or $100. And have them do the direct deposit right into Fidelity or TIA CREP or whatever. Immediately, you won't know that you're missing it, so you won't spend it. And I've got this little nest egg that I have because my first year of teaching, I saved as much money like as if I had a car payment, because after graduating with 6 years of undergraduate and graduate degree, my dad bought me a car. And I was like blown away. I didn't have a car payment. Oh, don't think that I'm spoiled. Before that, I was driving Pintos, you know.
Okay. But the
So,
point is, if you start young, it accrues and you will
yeah,
be happy.
yeah. And if you do it every month, you don't even realize it's going in. And before,
Right.
if you
Yeah.
invest in mutual funds, before you know it, you've got this little sum of money that you can play around with, or whatever, when you're in retirement age.
Sure. It's great advice. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, because that's not something that I knew to do. And actually, Larry Ballman at Mara High School, who I taught with for 2 years, is the one that made me do that.
Good for him. That's great advice.
Yeah. All right. Then the other one was, oh yeah, okay. The importance of having an outlet other than band. Now, I
Yes.
know everybody says that, but let's talk about what that means. It could be just keeping your house plants alive and getting into house plants, because I killed a cactus when I was a band director. And
That's hard to
I
do.
could, yeah, I couldn't keep anything because I was never home. And now, I'm really into gardening. Of course, I'm retired, but just try, cooking. I couldn't really, well, I could cook. My husband would say that that's not true, but I don't feel like I really could cook that well until COVID, and then
That's when I started baking, Andrea.
see,
I became a baker during COVID, and the first chocolate cake that I made went straight in the in the bin. It was completely inedible. So that's where I started. Seriously, it was not even could not even be eaten. So, but I think, but you're right. It's very healthy to have something completely separate that
yeah.
you are into to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be something, but you've got to be somewhat disciplined about it. Like you can't all of a sudden go, "Oh, I'm going to cook this fancy pineapple chicken on Saturday and then never cook until next summer." It's got to be something that you make yourself do when you have the opportunity.
Yeah.
But and it can be little things like that. It doesn't have to be you got to join a gym or something. That sometimes that I wasn't a member of a gym till I retired. I didn't really have time. My job was aerobic enough, at
Yeah, and
least.
I have to tell you, see, the gym saved me because that was my go
Yeah,
get my stress out place. But
Yeah.
everybody's different. But the point is, find your thing. I have
Yeah.
friends that play tennis all the time
Yeah.
because it's such a great outlet.
Hiking. I love
Sure.
hiking.
Yeah, whatever.
Because you're out in nature, So, it just needs to be something. Think about something you did as a kid that you really liked and enjoyed. Pick it back up again because, getting back on the bike is easier than figuring out how to ride a bike if you never rode one.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that advice a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And then let me think, what was the third thing? Give me just a second. Oh, okay, the importance of, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what I just talked about, but we call it self-care. Now, what I mean by that is, and I'm preaching to the choir, I never took a day off. I mean, this is before COVID. We would go to school with colds. We would go to school not feeling well. I never took away from, miss school unless, I think one time I had walking pneumonia or, I gave birth, I mean, come on, you know, so I,
You finally stopped for that. But your point is you didn't think that you felt like you couldn't take time away. You weren't didn't allow yourself that self-care time.
yeah. And I think self-care needs to be like serious, like, okay, well, maybe you do stay home and okay, but self-care goes beyond that. Go get a facial, go get a massage, get away from your environment, plan the beach trip, plan the trip to get away. Don't wait to the last minute and then go, oh yeah, and then I said I would help so and so with their band. Oh, I scheduled the honor band clinic. I mean, make sure that it's in your calendar because we're driven by our calendars. So put it in your calendar when you're going to do your self care, and that's to get away, to do something really good for yourself. Maybe it's a manicure, pedicure. Maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's buying a new outfit. Maybe I'm not good about thinking about, how you might do that, but
Well, but
put
the
it out.
point is to take that time. Do something that is self-care for you. I take time every day to read.
I love
And
that.
there were times, Andrea, when I was so busy that I didn't allow myself to do it. And I was like, what is wrong? Like, I am not right. Right. And I finally realized, and even if it's 20 minutes,
Yes.
it makes a huge difference to my life. I have to have that like escape, turn off the world, lose myself in a book. This is really important to me. So that's an example for my life.
Yeah. I'm now in a book club. My neighborhood has a book club. I've never been in a book club before.
Good.
And the book that we were supposed to read for our Monday night, I couldn't, it was little print. It was hard to read. I binge read all day Sunday and finished it. you know,
You are allowed to not read a book if you're not enjoying it.
I loved it. Oh, it was a great book. And
I
so
see.
that's what made me read all day Sunday. I couldn't put it down. But I
Yeah.
went to the book club Monday and we have a nice social group and it was fun talking about the book. But yeah, get involved in that. And, then the other end of that for me is spiritual. Whatever that means for you, make sure that you stay connected to your faith or what your beliefs are, and don't put that on the back burner. Allow that to help you through the tough times and be grateful through the good times, and just stay really connected to your heart center.
That's wonderful advice. And I love that you mentioned the calendar because if you are somebody, if you're listening to somebody and you know that you're not good at self-care and you're not good at taking time for yourself and you know you really need to, the answer is to start by scheduling it into your calendar. It doesn't matter. On this day from 3 to 3:30, I'm going to, whatever it is,
Yes.
right? Put it on your calendar and then you'll do it and it
Yes.
will become a new habit. That's great
Yeah.
advice.
And if you can do it with a friend, it makes you accountable. Like
Oh, absolutely.
my
Oh,
friend, the friend that had the real health issues, her and after she recovered, then we did yoga together on Monday nights, and it
Yeah.
was such a release. I loved it. It helped me get through some of those general music classes.
I am sure. That's like me at the gym. No offense, everybody, but I would like imagine that student or that band parent that I was, and I was like bench pressing them out. Like I was expiating them out of my life. But that was really good, a good way to get that out for me. Everybody needs their thing, and if you have to schedule it, and as to your point, Andrea, if you have a friend you're committed to do it with, you're going to show up,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're
Yeah.
just walking around the block. I'm meeting so and so after dinner. We're going to walk around the block. If you know they're going to be there, you're going to show up. That's great advice.
Yeah. So I think that's all I have, though.
I love it. This has been really, really helpful, very practical advice. I knew you'd be wonderful at this.
Uh,
Andrea, thank you for all the work you've done for taking care of all those students all those years. And if you still are out there working with people and making their lives better. And thanks for taking time to talk to me. This was really, you were great. I loved it.
I loved it. It was fun. All right. So you can send me another, what would you do if, and you can have me back.
Okay, well, we'll have to do that. But thanks for talking to me.
I enjoyed it.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.